Hello, how's everybody doing? Can you hear me? It's a little bit low. Go. All right. So, what we're going to be working on is a file storage web app. Basically, the idea is it's going to be something like Dropbox, Google Drive, just really basic, nothing super complicated. Um, we're going to be using Python. I want to use FastAPI for the background. And then we're going to be using on the front end Typer to create a CLI interface. And to start out with, that's how it's going to work. We're just going to use a CLI interface. You're going to be able to select a file. You're going to be able to upload a file. Like you're going to be able to download a file. Hopefully we might be able to get some folder syncing in there. And we're going to keep track of the state of the app using SQLite on the back end. It's not going to be super complicated. Hopefully, later on in the series, it's going to be hopefully two or three videos, live streams of coding this thing. And hopefully, eventually, I want to get into like working with TCP and creating our own like little protocol. So instead of using like HTTP to upload our files and download our files, we'll create our own protocol. We'll mess around with the binary that you need to communicate efficiently. It'll be interesting. It'll be fun. But like I said, today we're just going to start off and we're going to create like a REST API with FastAPI and a basic CLI. And to get started with that, we're going to have to figure out our database models. And like I have a document here where I've got all of the information I need. I'm not going to be able to show that right now. I wasn't able to get that hooked up to the computer just yet. In the future, I'll have that. But yeah, so we're going to start. I've already got a GitHub repository. We can close that. We can close that. And then we're going to go. I'm trying to remember where this is. Oh, it might actually be. You know what? I left that on the laptop. So we'll have to get the repository from GitHub. I have all this code. All this code will be on GitHub. I created an organization on my account. zech.builds YT. It's zech.builds YouTube. And then there's a repository on here. I've got the repository from the last live stream. All the code is there that we wrote on that live stream with the README on explaining how to use it. So if you want to mess around with that RSS Discord bot we created, that's on there for you. And then all the code we write for this new file storage web app is going to be available. Here, let me show that. Here we go. Transition. All of that is going to be available on the GitHub. And you're going to be able to just download all that stuff. And like, you'll be able to see our progress. We've got it all right here. So you'll be able to see what we've got done so far. And like, we're going to be working towards everything working towards the end. And hopefully by the end, you'll actually be able to set this up on your computer. And you'll be able to install it. And it'll just start watching whatever folder you tell it to. And it'll back it up to your own little web server that you're running. So you might put this on, like, if you have an old computer, you could run this on there. And then you would go into your CLI, you would log into that server you have set up, and it'll actually sync the files and up and down. That's the hope. That's the goal. We're trying to do that. We'll see how close we get to that. Like I said, I want to do this in like 3 episodes, maybe 4. We'll see. We'll see how long it takes. We'll see how far it goes. I mean, I do about 3 hours per stream, so we're talking 9 to 12 hours of streaming and coding. So it's going to be a lot to work through. If you have any questions, let me know. If you have any pointers, something you want to say, let me know. And like, if you're just coming by and you find this video, I run a Discord server, beginner.codes, where people can join and talk about code, learn about code, help other people learn about code. One of the best ways to get better at coding is to teach other people how to code. So that's the whole thought process behind the Beginner.code server. We're about 7,000 members strong, so check it out. It's in my bio. It should be in the description below. So you can join us there. We'd love to have you. Alright, so let's get started here. So I need to clone this repository. I can come over here to terminal, git clone. Alright, there we go. And then we can do... Oh, did I clone it into the wrong spot? I did, didn't I? Yeah, there it is. Alright, so let's just move that. Just using our trusty CLI commands. And it should be up here. Where is it hiding? There it is. Alright, so we should look up. There we go. Now we're in the right spot. We're on the main branch. We don't have a whole lot in here. Right now it's just the README. That's kind of hidden behind my... Let me do this. Let's move this one over here. And not that. You go over here. Alright, there we go. And then we can do charm dot, there we go. That'll open that up for us. There we go. Alright, so there we go. We've got the README. We've got everything that's in that. That's just what's on the GitHub. Already covered all that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to have... Yeah, I see. I noticed I was looking at my OBS and I could see that the terminal was kind of hidden. So yeah, I was just showing that there's only one file in here. So we're going to go ahead and change that up. So there's going to be 3 parts to this project. When you install it, you're going to have 2 ways you can install it. You can install it as a server that handles users logging in. It handles accepting new file uploads. It can allow you to download files. So it's going to do all the fun logic. And like when we build our web app, that's going to be on the server. So that's one thing that you're going to need to be able to install from this project. But then there's also the other things you're going to need to be able to install, which is the CLI, the command line interface. So that's going to be a separate installation. So I've kind of got 2 parts to this project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 2 folders, 2 package folders. So let's start out by doing that. We're just going to start making out all these packages, all these folders. This is going to be the server. There we go. And then we're going to do directory. This is going to be our CLI. All right. And that got made inside the server folder. So let's move that out. Do that. There we go. Okay. So now we've got our folders. Now inside here, the front end isn't going to use a database. I figure with login and all that, we'll probably just put that inside of a config file of some kind, like some env file. Pretty simple. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to put the database on the server side. And I'm going to create a folder for that inside of the server folder. And that's going to handle all of our models for our database, any migrations we're doing, any of that stuff is going to go inside the database, like all of our logic for that, for how we convert from database queries to objects representing that data, to models representing that data, will happen inside our database folder. And then I'm trying to think. We need to have an API. So let's create another folder. Like I'm trying to break this up into the individual parts. I don't want everything in one gigantic file. So I'm just trying to think through what parts we're going to have and like break it out so this way I know where everything goes. So right now we're going to make a REST API. Directory. API. We'll just call it API. There we go. So that's where all of our code for our FastAPI API server is going to go. Now, one thing I'm going to have to figure out, and I haven't messed around with FastAPI that much. I've built one project with it in the past. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of research on this. But we want to be thinking ahead. Because I know I'm going to build a web app. And I'm going to use Bootstrap, and I'm going to make it look all pretty. And you're going to be able to go on there and see the list of all your files. And you're going to be able to delete them, upload new ones, move them around. Like general file storage service stuff. But that I don't want that code to be mixed in with my REST API code. Like, they're separate things. The REST API is entirely separate from the web API. The web API is a front end, even though it's going to be on the server side. So I got to think ahead. How am I going to create this server that's going to both have an API and it's going to have our front end? So I've got to figure out how to do that. And that's going to, so like, I'm going to have my API folder, which is going to have all the API logic. And then I'm probably going to want to have a server file. Right like this. No, we don't want to. Don't ask again, please. We'll deal with that later. And that accidentally got put inside the database folder. So let's move that back up here. Do the refactor. Thank you. So that's where I want to launch my server from. And it's going to have to somehow pull in the code from this API folder. And I don't know how to do that yet. So we're going to have to learn that. That's going to be coming up. We're going to be digging into the docs and getting real deep here. Alright. So what's next? Do we want to use... I don't have anything installed yet. I don't have... Hey, Ann. Are you from the Discord, or you just find us? I'd love to know. Alright. So back to what we were doing. Let's see. I've got to create the database. I think that's where we want to start. We're just going to use SQLite. I'm not going to use anything crazy. I'm just going to write my own SQL. I think that's probably the most beneficial right now. It's the most straightforward. I don't have to figure out, like, I would have loved, because, like, Typer and FastAPI are made by the same guy. And he also makes SQL model. And, like, they all are built on top of Pydantic. So I would love to be able to use Pydantic on the front end, on the back end, on the client side, for the database. Unfortunately, everything else is async. And SQL model, as far as I could tell last night, isn't supporting async code first party. I know it's possible. Back when he first released SQL model, I did get it working with async. It was a little bit of a pain in the neck. So I don't want to mess with that right now. We're just going to be working with... I've got a files table, a folders table, and a users table. It's just 3 tables. We're only going to have a few queries. I think we can just write all that SQL ourselves. So rather than having to mess with, like, installing SQL Alchemy and having to dig through the docs, like, they just added async support. So it'll just be easier to work with SQLite. And we'll use, like, I've got to figure out what the package is for using SQLite with async. But it shouldn't be too difficult. So let's get started on that. We'll start on the database. Now, one thing we've got to think about is... Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Hit the wrong button. I meant to close this and close that. Alright. So one thing we got to think about is... How do we... Hey, Rev Tony. How's it going? So one thing we gotta think about with the database is if we're like halfway through this project and we realize we need something we didn't think about before, how do we add that to our project without having to write like all kinds of special code. It's like we want to think about this ahead of time so that we can structure everything and get everything set up so it works from the get-go in a way that lets us make changes. So I'm just going to make some migrations. I'm going to probably make a folder for these. We're making a lot of folders. Like, we're trying to think this through. We're trying to understand what our project is going to need going forward. So we're going to do migrations. And inside of here, we're going to probably put... I'm trying to think, how do we want to organize this? How do we want to keep track of what version of the database needs what code to be run? So basically, when we install this for the first time, and we build our database for the first time, it's going to get the version 1 SQL code. But then, later, when we make changes, if we make any changes, we have to have a way to say, oh, hey, your current installation has a database that supports this. And then later, we can go in and say, hey, there's a new database version. Make these changes to that database that you already had. But then, we also need to be able to support the situation where if someone comes in and just installs the project, and we've got like 3 different versions of database, we want to be able to support them getting the latest database. It's not the simplest thing, especially since we're going to be writing the SQL on our own. So I've got some ideas. It's going to end up requiring us to write a little bit of duplication. It's not going to be the driest approach, but it's not a bad approach, especially for such a small scale and simple project that isn't really going to be going into production. It's just something we're doing for fun. So I'm not too worried about it. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to create a Python file, and I'm going to call it version 1. Is that what we want to call it? Yeah, we'll call it version 1. Alright. And then inside of here, I'm going to need to import... What do we need to import? I don't know what we need to import. So we want to support async. So we need to figure that out. We need to figure that out first and foremost. Okay? So what we're going to need to do is async Python SQLite. It's not built into Python. Is this it right here? Now what I'm looking for here is, was it updated recently? And it was updated about 3 months ago, which is about fine. Like, something like this is going to be fairly stable. There's not a lot of change going. Like, the SQLite API is set in stone. Like, you know what it is. So you can build a wrapper around that API and know that it's complete. So you're just making bug fixes at that point. So, like, it's probably common to see, like, 3, 6, 12 months of inactivity on the project. So I think this is the one we're going to use. I think I've used this one in the past. So we're just looking for our pip install. Now, I'm not using pip directly. I am using Poetry. I can't remember if I installed Poetry. So let's just check. I have not installed Poetry. So we're going to do Poetry init. Right, like that. We're just going to go with that package name. Description, we'll just go with that for now. License, compatible, 3.9. I was going to do 3.10. I don't know why that's saying 3.9 plus, but that works. I don't want to do it right here. Let's do yes. We'll install PyTest. And this is why I didn't want to do it there, because it doesn't just give it to you. You got to pick it from a list, and that can be a little bit weird sometimes. Add a package. Yes, that's correct. All right. Now we're going to do Poetry, add, there we go. We're going to add our package. And while we're here, let's add all the rest of our packages. Since we're already entering the commands, all right, we're going to do FastAPI. All right. And then next we're going to do... Actually, does Poetry support entering multiple? That might be a little bit faster, because we need to install a few things here. what was the other stuff we needed? We can go over here. FastAPI and typer. HTTPX and typer. Let's try this out. I've never actually done it this way. There we go. Yeah, it does do both. That's handy. Handy feature. No, it's not VS Code. That is PyCharm. Most of this project's going to be in Python. I'm comfortable with PyCharm. Alright, so we've got all that added. So let's just git add. Nope, we don't want to do that. We want to do poetry lock pyproject.toml. Alright. Git commit -m add project dependencies. We want to make sure we're doing this as we go. Since if we do anything wrong, we can go back a step without having to remember what changes we made. It makes things a little bit easier. Alright, we can get push. Alright, and then you'll see, if we reload this, they showed up on GitHub. They're right there. Nice and handy. They're all backed up. If my computer decides to die in the middle of the stream, we didn't lose anything. Alright. Okay, so let's do poetry install. Just to make sure it builds that VM. Alright, there we go. It did it right. Alright, so next up, what do we need to do? We need to come over here, and I need to make sure this is using the VM. This is always a little bit of a problem with PyCharm. I wish they would make this a little bit smarter. Add. And there, it detected it. And that's the thing. I don't know why it doesn't detect it when I add it. It's a little confusing. But there we go. That's installed. You can see we've got our AIO SQLite. And then like we've got HTTPX. Someone's using a TERS in here. I'm not sure which project is using that. We've got Starlet. We've got Typer. All the ones we installed are here. There's Pydantic hiding in there. So we got a few different projects installed. Alright. So then we're going to do... Let's jump back over here. Let's look at AI SQLite. Row factory. That's just... This might be something we're going to end up messing with. This right here. This row factory. That's just going to determine... I think... I don't know, but I feel like... Well, actually, this one is using a dictionary. I think, like, the built-in SQLite package, it just gives you back a tuple for each row. So you've got to kind of know which index is which column. And it looks like this is being nice and giving us a dictionary of all the values for each row, which is really nice. And that's what this line right here is doing. We could override that behavior, and we could have it create a model. And so we might actually mess with that so that we can use a model factory that'll detect what model each row should use. Now, if we do a custom query, that won't work necessarily. It'll really depend. But I think we could pull out the keys. I'm not sure how this works. So we could jump into the code for this and see how that works. But we're not there just yet. Right now, I just want to know how to create a connection. And then I want to know how to run a query. All right. And yeah, and like see here, he's got an insert. So like that's what we're worried about right now. Because right now we got to do a create table. Which CLI am I using for my project? I'm using PyTest as the ID, for testing. I'm going to be doing that from PyCharm. PyCharm handles that really well. I'll be able to just start up I'll create a test folder, it'll detect that, and it'll automatically give me an option. Like, I'll be able to do, it's right here. Like, it gives me this list of everything I can run. So, like, I got one file in this project, so I can just run that one file. When I add tests, they'll show up in here. I'll be able to select that, and it'll let me run that just by pressing Control-R. No matter what file I'm looking at, whatever last thing I ran from this menu, that will be what it runs. And so it's super convenient. I can just jump around through the whole project and just make changes and run my tests. I'm not super familiar with using FastAPI with PyTest. So we may not work with that right away. I'm probably not going to be writing tests right away. I'm probably going to be messing with that later in the week. Maybe next stream. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Oh, that's a convenient thing. Yeah, it's way more convenient. It's just literally a hotkey away. Super convenient. And like, just so you're aware, I don't know if anyone was on my last stream. The stream is like 30 seconds behind me. So I will see your message. I will respond immediately, and you'll find out about 30, 40 seconds later. So if anybody knows how to make that a little bit more like rapid, that would be great. I'm sure it's a setting somewhere in YouTube, so I can just it'd be nice to be able to respond more immediately and have an actual dialogue. It's kind of hard to have a dialogue. It's almost like talking to Mars right here. Like, all right. So we're working on the migration. So we're gonna import AIO SQLite class. What I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have a class, and like each of these version files inside the migrations folder will have a migration class. If I could spell migration, there we go. All right, and it's just gonna have what's it gonna have? Let's think about this. It's gotta have a method, an async method, because we're using an async library. So we're gonna just need to use an async method. And this is gonna get, I'm trying to think, what are we doing here? You know what, that's not what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do def, this is what we're gonna do. Version equals 1. This way, when we run our bot, when we run the project, when we run a migration, it's going to go through all the migration files and check what version they are. And then any that are a higher version than the current version will get run. And they'll get run in order, just moving down from like 1 to 10. So like if you have a version 1, a version 2, a version 3, and a version 4, and your database is version 2, it'll run migrations 3 and 4. And it won't run migration 1 and 2. Because you're already at that version. Just trying to keep an eye on chat. What is the poetry command I'm using? That's a package manager. It makes things a little bit more convenient than using pip. Like you see, it created these files right here. So it created this pyproject.toml. And so whenever I do add, it adds an entry right here, okay? And it just says like what version and all that. So now anybody else can grab this project and run poetry install, and it'll install all of this stuff for them. And like if you do poetry install --dev, it'll install the dev dependencies too. You'll have all that stuff installed, and you didn't have to know what to install. You just told Poetry to do it for you. And it's even more powerful than that, because if you jump over into this lock file, it seems like a lot of redundant info. But like this is every package. Because over here, it's just the ones we did add. We come over here, and you see it's got like any IO, which I didn't install. It's a dependency of one of my other packages that I did install. So it's got that, and it's like, all right, this is the version that I installed. So this is the version that our code used. So as long as this poetry lock file is in here, when you run poetry install, you will get exactly the packages I installed. Because it's going to install exactly 3.5.0. And like it even keeps track of all like the different things. So it doesn't have to go out to the Python package index, PyPy. to figure out if your version of Python is compatible with all the packages for this project. So it has a lot of like little things that are really convenient. And if we keep scrolling down here inside this lock file, like there's a lot of information in here. But if we scroll way down, look at this mess. Look at this mess. This is got the hash codes for all of the wheel files, like the installation files that PyPy gives you. So what this is doing is saying we installed this package and it had this hash. So if it ever installs that package and it doesn't have that hash, it'll know something's wrong. And it'll throw an error and let us know. So if anybody tampered with it or anything like that, we'll get notified. So we'll know anytime we do poetry install that what we're getting has been tested and is known to support the code that's been written. So you'll never get a package that's an incompatible version. And that's what's going on here. And that's why I use poetry. It's just a little more powerful than just using pip. And like poetry is using pip in the background. It's just adding on this whole other layer here that does so much more for you. So it's really handy. It's really useful. If you want to use it, just pip install poetry and you'll have it. It'll add it to your CLI so you can access it. And it's very handy. And I pretty much don't use pip directly. I can even use this to create a package on the Python package index. So I have a few packages on there, and all I do is poetry build, and that creates the installation files that the Python package index needs. And then I just do poetry publish. It asks me for my username and password, and then it uploads the files for me and puts it online, and it's all set and ready to go. Anybody else can go in and do pip install my package. And so poetry is really handy. It's got a lot of tools that are really useful, and it's a great time. It makes your life so much simpler. All right, okay. All right, so now let's see. Version 1, the version 1 migration is going to be a little bit different than everything else because it needs to understand. So maybe we don't want to name this version 1. I'm trying to think here because well, yeah, that's fine. It's not a migration really. This is the database creation. So anytime we create a new column or table or anything like that, we're going to want to put that inside the version 1 migration. So this is going to have our create tables. It's going to have all of that there for us. And then this is where, like I said, this is the most dry approach because it's all going to be in this version 1 migration. So if you ever create the project, it's going to build all the tables, and you don't want to have to call all the other migrations. But if you don't, you need to have all the alter table stuff. And that's what the other ones are going to have. They're all going to have like the alter tables. If you have to create a new table, that's going to be in there as well. But then this is going to be everything. Just as few commands as possible. As few SQL statements as possible. All right? So how are we going to do this? We're going to do async dev run. This is what we're going to do. And then we're going to do db aio connection. We're going to name that connection. .connection. All right. So, that makes sense? Let's jump back over here to the docs. Did it have no, it doesn't have a cursor. So we're just working right off of this db object, this db connection object. So there, we're going to just pass in. When we decide to run this migration, we're going to run this real quick code, and it's going to create all of our tables. So in here, we're going to have stuff like connection.execute. Right, let's think. We need to create a users table. How do we want to do plural or do we want to do single? Just checking chat here. Gotta keep up with chat. All right. So we're going to create a users table. Create. I cannot spell. Table. Users. Now, let's see. It's been a while since I've written a create table. So let's just make sure we get it right on the first try here. Create table. Let's do SQLite. Let's just make sure we get the right syntax. All right. Okay, so we're doing column name, data type, and then like primary key. All right, so we're gonna do ID, and then it's gonna be an integer. Does it tell me exactly? I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, it's integer. Yeah, it's integer. They have it capitalized. Let's capitalize ours. And we won't capitalize it. We'll just do ID like that. So our columns are going to be lowercase. Our tables are going to be capital, like title case. And this is going to be a primary key. Now, out of the box, I don't believe Python SQLite supports foreign keys. So I'm not going to worry about foreign keys. We're not going to be storing a huge amount of data. If you decide to use this and decide to add in 100 million files, you might run into problems. But I think for just a quick project, I don't need to worry too much about efficiency. Like, it's going to be enough to do it this way. Yeah, you can run it on multiple lines. Actually, because I'm just concatenating a string here. Because like in Python, like if we pull up the terminal real quick, like I can show you what I mean here. Python. If you do, and it creates one string, even though there's a space in between, it just concatenates them together. So that's what's happening here. This is just building one long string. You can put new lines in there. You can put white space in there, whatever you want to make it look pretty. It's not a big concern. I'm not worried about it. I'm just making it look pretty for me inside my Python code by doing it this way. So yeah, however you want to do it. Like, SQLite will handle it. Yeah. All right. So we need to add an ID. Each user is going to get a name. What is the data type for text? There we go, text. And it needs to be not null. So let's just copy that whole thing right there. Boom. Save ourselves a few, whoops. I copied everything. Well, we'll just do it ourselves. Not null. There we go. All right, enter. And then we need a password field. This is going to be hashed. It's not going to be, you really shouldn't roll your own password encryption. I'm going to do it because this is just a small project. Again, like this is just be something we run on our computers, on our home networks. It's not going to be going into production. We're not going to be storing anybody's actual passwords, hopefully. But I figured it'd be fun to actually show how the basic logic for safe password handling works. So I'm actually going to use passwords. Not null. Now, SQLite doesn't actually support like varchar or anything like that. It doesn't support like setting like the length of the text. It just kind of just goes with whatever you give it. I do want to use unique constraints. The name should be unique because we're logging in with that name. So we don't want to have two accounts with the same name. So by using that unique constraint, it'll allow us to just do that. And I'm trying to think. I don't think we're going to worry about that. I was worried about maybe we should add some case sensitivity checks or anything like that. I don't think we're going to do that. I want to keep the capitalization that you set. So we're going to do that. All right. Well, I'm trying to think. we're not going to have sharing or anything like that, so we don't need to worry about any of that, do we? I don't think so. Yeah, we're not going to have to worry about putting the username in the URL or anything like that, because if like I was going to put the username in the URL, I might want to let the user set any name they want, and then we take that name and we create a unique slug of that's a valid URL name that we could put into the URL. I don't need to worry about that. I don't think we're going to worry about that. I think we're just going to have it. You log in, and then you go to your files, and like it'll be nice. It'll be interesting. We'll get it there. All right. So that's our users table, and that's going to create that. We can. Oh, you know what? We're going to do tests. Let me get on this. I'm going to do poetry, add, dev, PyTest. I can't remember. Is it exact spelling? Py, because we're doing async code here. So I want to make sure that my tests support async code. There is a PyTest plugin, and you can see, oops, I hit the enter button too soon. There we go. There's an async package for PyTest that we can install, and it'll let us mark a test as async. And then we can set the async function, and then we'll be able to await, and we won't have to create a loop. We won't have to do any of that. I have run into issues using it a little bit just because of how async works. I have a workaround for that problem. So if we come across it, I'll show you that workaround. I might make a blog post about that workaround and then share it on Twitter and see if anybody tells me I'm wrong. I'm sure I am. All right, so how do we install this? That's the name. I couldn't remember if it was one long name or if it had a hyphen. So right like that, poetry add, and I'm adding it as just dev because when we release this, you don't want to have PyTest. If you're just installing it so that you can upload your files and download your files and sync them to your laptop from your desktop, you don't need tests. So I'm putting all the testing stuff behind that dev flag to make things a little bit cleaner when we install this on our machines. And because I'm using poetry install, it is installing the dev stuff. Right? Is it? Yeah, I think I saw it in there. We can check. -m. You know what? We're not actually inside of the... Like, it'll let me access the virtual environment by doing this. -m PyTest. And it didn't explode. Yeah, it's showing me my PyTest. So it's installing PyTest. I'll need to make sure when I share the instructions for installation that I share the instructions to not install all the dev dependencies. Oh, excuse me. Just had lunch and got a little bit of gas. Alright. Okay, so there we go. We got that. Simple enough. So now, let's real quick come over here. We're going to do... Alright, what do we want to do? We want to create a tests folder. Python package. Tests. And then we're just going to get in here. We're going to create test. Whoop. Python file. Test. Migrations. Alright. And then we're going to just do from... How do we do this? Migrations. Did I put it in the wrong spot? It's in the wrong spot, isn't it? How did that end up in my VM? I need to be here. Refactor. Thank you. Get out of my way. All right. We're going to actually exclude that. Can I hide the excluded? Oh, goodness. There's a way to hide excluded stuff from here, and I can't remember what it is. Migration. We're going to do server.database.migrations import version 1. All right, so now we've got our version 1, and then we need to do from PyTest. Well, we'll just do import PyTest. Move that up there. Boom. Get that nicely organized. And then PyTest.mark asyncio. Was it asyncio or async? Now I can't remember. And I closed that tab, didn't I? So let's bring that back up. I think it's async EO because async is a keyword. See, they couldn't use that. And then we're going to do test migration 1 version 1. All right, there we go. And then I'm trying to think, does this work? I'm curious if that works. Let's try this. Can we do a fixture? Dot fixture async dev db. All right. And then I don't think this is going to work. And the reason why I think that is because the way this is going to work with the with statement is we have to use a yield. And I don't think that'll work with an async function. So I'm not going to mess with this. I'm going to experiment with that later. I don't know how that would work. So we're just going to handle creating the connection ourselves. We need to import AIO SQLite. Move that up to get it nice and get the names organized. It was AIO SQLite. Come over here and then connect as DB. All right. And then we got to change this. And let's see if this works. You should be able to create a SQLite database in memory. So normally it would create a file, but in this case, I'm going to just have it create that file virtually in memory. So this way, it just gets destroyed every time the tests finish, and we don't have to worry about cleaning up a file. All right. So then we had to create migration version 1.migration. There we go. Migration.run. And then we pass it DB. All right. And then I'm trying to think how we can verify that table got created. So let's go on Google, SQLite, get list of tables. So we're going to do a query to see if that users table got created. So that's what I'm going for here. So we're just going to create a test that creates the tables with the migration run, and then it verifies that those tables got created. Boom. Can I literally just pass that to execute? I guess we'll find out. Let's add Python to this query. And I can't spell. All right. Select name from. All right, here we go. I was going to say, that seemed a little bit too easy. This guy has the query that we need to use for that. Right. Tables equals DB. Whoop. You see, that's getting highlighted because we didn't await it. There we go. Now it's not highlighted. db.execute, and this has got to be awaited. Select. There we go. All right. Now, tables. So now we got to figure out how we get the values. I don't know. So the way they want us to do this, it's actually different. We got to create a cursor. The execute is going to return a cursor. And a cursor is just pointing at the current value in the query result. So that's what's happening there. So we're going to create this query as cursor. And we can clean this up. Tables result equals. So this line isn't quite so long. Boom, boom, there we go. And then I'm not sure. Cursor dot. They don't have. This is what bugs me. Python now has pretty decent type hinting. So if you're using that, I can just do dot and it'll tell me all the functions I get. Unfortunately, the AIO SQLite is not using type hinting. So I'm going to go old school here, and I'm just going to do this. I want to see if there's a way for me to convert the cursor object into a list. I just want a list of tables. That's all I care about. So we're going to just run. And like you see here, it says we have the option for Python tests for test migrations. So we're just going to run that. And there, PyTest ran. And now here's my output. And I'm just looking for a function that I can use to do what I need. Execute menu, fetch all, fetch one, fetch many. Let's do fetch all and see what that gets us. Wait. Let's run that again. And there we go. It's just giving me a tuple of table names. All right, so we're going to do table names equals, and then we're going to do assert table names equals users, right like that. Then we run the test. Expected users, got a list. Aha. So, I see. So it's giving me a list of rows. So, let's think. How do we want to do this? We can just do it that way. Right like that. Run that, and there we go. Migration version 1 passed. So 100% of our tests function. And now we know that our migration code can run. And it can create the tables that we need. So we'll come back over here. Because this isn't the only table that we need to create. So, next we're going to do a folder table. Because what I'm going to do is, each file is going to get assigned to a folder ID. And then each folder will get assigned to its own folder IDs. And then if there's no folder ID assigned on a folder, we'll know it's in the root folder. Alright. So we need to create that folder table. We're going to do this. Just copy that over. Because it's really similar. And it's going to get an ID. It's going to get a name. The name doesn't need to be unique. Because you could have a folder test and then a folder test inside that folder. And another user might have a table or a folder named test. And it's like everybody needs to be able to have their own folders with the same names. You're going to know which one to use based on the context. Like, are you already inside of the test folder? Okay, we want to find the test folder inside the test folder. So it doesn't matter if the names are the same, because we know from the context what we're looking for. And we're going to be using IDs for a lot of that fetching. So it's not going to really be a problem. And we're not going to need a password on a folder, but we are going to need the owner ID. So that's going to be coming from the users table. It's going to be this value right here. And like I said, SQLite doesn't necessarily support foreign keys. I know there's a way to enable it, and I'm not sure if Python 3.10 has enabled it or not. I don't think it has, so I'm not even going to worry about it. It's just an efficiency thing. We can do the joining ourselves, or we can write our queries that way. It's not hard. It doesn't really make anything more difficult. It's just an optimization technique for the database. That's all it really does. All right. It's one of the first really nice days we've had this year, so it's a little warm inside the house. I don't want to install an air conditioner just yet, because we had like a bunch of snow earlier in the week. Like, you couldn't even get out of the driveway kind of snow. So we're not quite to the point in the year where installing an air conditioner makes sense. I do have the windows open, but it's a little bit warm in here still. All right. Okay, so the owner ID, there we go. And that's all that the folder really needs. We just need to have a way to uniquely identify it. That's our ID. Then we have a way for the user to identify the folder, which is the name. And then we have the owner ID, so we know which user it belongs to. Oh, Subham, have a great night. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. All right, so now we've got our folders. And I'm just going to jump back over here to the tests. We should have done this first, but whoop, that's not correct. Because that's each of our rows. So this is going to add another row. Now, my concern here is the ordering. If the order is different, and I'm not sure how SQLite handles this, does it keep the order of when the tables were added, and that's what the fetch all is going to return? Or is it an arbitrary ordering, and there's no guarantee? So this might actually blow up. This may not work. It worked. It functioned. So, apparently SQLite, well, there's a 1 in 2 chance that it would work. So, we still don't really know anything. But we'll find out more when we add in our file table. Files table. We're going plural here, because the table itself holds a lot of files. All right. So each file is going to get its unique identifier. For local dev testing with something like Postgres production, how would you go about that with handwritten queries? You wouldn't with handwritten queries. You would have to write separate queries in a lot of cases because there are syntax differences. And if you want to use Postgres, you would for sure want to use foreign keys. That optimization really helps Postgres, especially with like indexing and things like that. Like you're not going to do indexing in SQLite, but in Postgres you're going to use indexing to make things a lot faster, like way faster. So you're going to end up writing way different queries. If you were planning to do one database type in dev and then another database type in production, you would use SQL Alchemy, and then you would use like Alembic for your migrations. It makes things a lot cleaner, makes things a lot easier to switch between database types. So, yeah, this is just literally how I'm doing it now to make my life a little bit easier, because I'm already having to learn. I re-pick up FastAPI. I have to learn Typer. I've not used HTTPX before, but it's basically like requests, so it shouldn't be too difficult. Like, I've got a lot of stuff I'm already learning with this project, so a lot of thinking, a lot of talking, so I don't want to get too crazy. And SQL Alchemy, I have had a lot of difficulty with, and I want to use it async, and like that's new, so it's a little bit harder to Google for answers on that. So I didn't feel like I wanted to deal with that today. Yeah, no problem, Kintech. All right. Now, what else do we need on this? So, next up, this is going to get, so it's got the ID, it's got the name, and it's got the owner ID. Like, those are the same from the folder. But we also need to know the path to the file on disk. You don't want to have to create all these files and folders on your server. You just want to put all the files into one spot and just be done with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to rename all the files when they get uploaded. And we're just going to put them in a giant folder filled with everybody's files. All right? So we need to store the name of that file on our server's storage. So I have to store that in the database. So I'm going to call that path, and that's going to be a text. Making sure, yeah, not null. Not null, and path needs to be not null. Owner needs to be not null. Oh, we missed that up here on here. All right. Next up, we're going to do the file name. And since we're renaming it, we need to know, so like the path is the name we renamed it to. And then we're going to have the file name, which is going to be the file name that was uploaded. And we missed an L on null. There we go. So there we go. We've got file name. We've got path. Tab uploaded. This is going to be the time that it was uploaded. This is going to help us. We're going to make that an integer, not text. And that's just going to be the timestamp when it was uploaded. So later when we do a sync, we'll know, all right, this file was modified after the last time it was uploaded. It's not going to be a perfect solution, but it's the cleanest solution, and I really don't want to start messing with diffs. There was a handy diff package in Python that would let you do that, but I don't want to deal with that. That's not going to be. We're just going to go by last uploaded, last modified. If it's modified more recently than it was uploaded, that's the version we use. So if you modify it on one computer and modify it on another computer, and you go back to that other computer you modified on first and upload, that upload time is going to be newer than when it was modified on that other computer, and you're technically losing data, and it won't get automatically synced. It's a trade-off. It's a lot more complicated to actually do this properly. So we're just gonna wing it and get it as good as we can. All right. Now this is gonna have a folder ID, which is an integer, and then not null. That's the folder it's in. Let me see something. Owner not null. Okay. We missed something right here. Each folder needs to know what folder it's in. So we need to add that before we forget. Folder ID. Trying to think of a good name for this field. Parent ID. And then that's going to be an integer. And that can be null. And the reason for that is when you create a user, they don't have a folder. So any folder that gets added isn't going to have a parent folder. So that's got to be null. So that's what we're doing here. We could, maybe this is what we do. No, the reason why I can't do 0, I could do -1. You know what? Let's do that. We're going to do not null. And then if that ever gets set to -1, we know it's in the user's root directory. So it's not inside a folder. It's just on their account. All right. So that makes sense. I think that makes sense. All right. And that'll work the same here. You'll be able to put -1 for the folder ID, and you'll know that file is just in their root directory. All right. Anything else here? I think we got all of that. Yeah. So there we go. Now we've got all of the tables, and we'll come over here and we'll add that to our test. Files. You know what? Let us do this. Let's make this a set. And then we're going to use a set expression to make this something useful. Name for name, row 0, like that, for row in table names, like that. And then we run that test, and that'll just ensure that if the SQLite is not giving any guarantee on the order of table names, it comes back nice and neat. It works as a set. We'll make sure they're equal all the time, no matter the ordering. All right, so there we go. We've got our first tests for creating our SQLite tables. All right, so next up, we need to create our server file. I want to think here. we're going to create a main file. We're going to do Python file, the dunder main. So this way, when we just go onto our command line and we want to run the server, all we have to do is python-m server, and it'll run this dunder main file. And that it's going to import. Just trying to make sure I'm going to get all this right. .server. All right. And then we're going to do server as server. Just clean that name up a little bit. Make it a little bit easier for ourselves. And then we're going to need to import asyncio. For now, this might end up being a little bit different later. We'll see. I got to figure out how FastAPI works at some point here. So we're going to do def async def. You know what? We can do it this way. Asyncio dot run server dot run. All right. So now we've got to create this run coroutine because that's what asyncio.run takes. And then, so we're going to come over here, get out of all these files that I created. I think I closed the one I needed. There we go. And then we're going to do async def run. All right. Now what do we do? And why did I do it that way? Why did I create this server file that has the run function in it? And then I created the dunder main to actually call this run function. The reason I do that is because you can't really import that dunder main file. So let's say you wanted to modify the setup process and then run the server. You wouldn't be able to do it. You have to rewrite all of the code inside this run coroutine. So by putting it in its own importable file, you'll be able to use this coroutine if you need it. So that's just why I did all that. That's why I made those 3 lines in one file that just calls one line in another file. So not super hard. And then like we can just do print hello. We're just gonna do that, and then we're gonna jump over here. I can actually try to decide how I want to do this. I can do poetry run server. Boom! It printed hello. And that was with an async loop and everything. Nice and simple. Not super complicated. All right. It's a lot of time. I spent a lot of time on this metal. I've written a lot of code. It's been, at this point, oh my gosh, almost 17 years. It'll be 17 years this fall since I started coding. So you'll get here eventually. Like, I can do a lot of this off the cuff just because I've been doing it for so long. But yeah. All right, so what we want to do now is we need to create the connection. We've got to do that asyncio with, we need to import. I'm trying to think, because what we want to not do is we want to not have to have everything running the database everywhere. And we want to make things nice and neat. We want to make sure our database always closes. We want to make sure everything is... I'm trying to think. I'm not sure how FastAPI works. So I think for now, I'm not going to worry about this too much. FastAPI has an injection system that we will be using. So I'm not going to worry too much about this. This is just right now to get us on the right track. You know what? We've got that migration working. Maybe we should get FastAPI working now. So let's do that. Let's jump over here. Let's go. Let's make this a little bit bigger. We're going to go to FastAPI. And let's just jump over here. Does he have user guide intro for steps? Is that what we want to do? Yeah, so he wants us to create an app right like that. So that actually would go in our dunder init. So, we can do that simple enough. I'm still going to do, just thinking here, I'm trying to think how we want to do this. So we need to install UVcorn. Did it install UVcorn? Poetry, add UVcorn. UVcorn is just a small, it's pretty much a production ready server written in Python that can handle ASCII, which is Python's specification for writing an HTTP server. And so, like, basically, it's like you get a function, you get a few functions that tell you about the environment. So, like, what the headers were on the request, any cookies, what URL was requested, all that information. And then it gives you a function that you can call to return your stuff, to return a response to the request. And UVcorn handles all that for you and lets you call your code. So, let's see here. Now we have UVcorn installed. Let's do this. Git add that, git commit -m, add UVcorn. I have no idea how to actually spell, pronounce this. I'm just going by what I think is right. And then let's git add server, database, migrations version 1. Git add, and let's add our tests. All right, git commit -m, add v1 migration. All right. And then if we just check, we've got a lot of mess in here and it keeps getting in my way. So let's add those two. Add that to our getignore. And then if we check our .getignore, you can see that we got that in there. Now, I can't remember if I can do the same. I don't need to do it for anything else, right? Well, no, we need to add PyCache. Let's just make sure. There we go. Got them both in there. Git add, getignore, git commit. Oh, didn't mean to do that, but oh well. We can work from here. What do we want to say? What were we doing? We were ignore PyCache and IDE settings. And let's see if we can remember how to get out of Vim. Right Q. Whoops, we goofed something up. Oh no! You know why? It's not Vim. I changed it to Nano. And then we can do git status, and it's just the main and the server file. And I think git log, that'll show us we did the add readme, and then we have ignore PyCache and IDE settings. And then we get out of this how. There we go. All right. That can be a little bit confusing sometimes. I don't use the CLI too much. I use it enough. Generally, if I need to look at the logs, I have an application that lets me do all of that. Like, I can literally pull it up and we can jump in and you can come over here and look at the history, see all the commits. This makes my life so much easier. The downside is it costs me money. So, but I can navigate this, and it's good to know these commands, at least to an extent, because you never know when you're going to find yourself on a server and you're needing to work with Git to switch between versions and all that stuff. So knowing how to get into the log, knowing how to create a commit, how to check what's uncommitted, remove stuff, all that. It's very useful. So knowing the basic Git commands, pretty much essential knowledge. All right. Next up, poetry run. Let's just get, how do we want to do this? We want to do server app, right? Maybe? Yeah, we'll do that. Server app, and then reload, which is the command we're going to use. And it's going to give us an error because we haven't created app yet. It hasn't been found with the module server. So what do we have to do to add that to our server? The way the server works is when you import the server package, so this folder right here, when you import that, it's going to import the dunder init file. So we're going to do Python file, right like that. And then we're going to do the app, which actually, this is not going to be that. We're going to do import FastAPI, FastAPI, there we go. And then we're going to come over here, and we're going to look at what we're supposed to do. Because, ta-da, running, did he have the code up? He had the code up here, didn't he? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do this right here. Let's just make a real quick hello world at app.get slash, all right, async def hello return. Now this is FastAPI, so it's expecting to send back JSON. So we're just going to give it a quick message, hello world, right like that. Now that worked. Now does it tell us where we are? Okay, here we are. We're on port 8000. So if we come over to Chrome and create a new tab, boom, there's our message. Message, hello world. So the API is working. All right. So next up, we need to figure out how to connect that to a database. Let's see, does he have anything on here about connecting to a database? Because right now, I'm not working on building a website. I'm just building the API. That's all I care about. And so what I want to figure out right now is how to connect my database to each of these functions. And I don't want to have a global variable database. Like, I just don't want to do that. The only reason I have this global variable is because that needs to be able to be reached from, where did it go? Right here. Right here. This is where that needs to be reached. That's just saying, go into the server module and grab the app object. All right? Now, this is all in the dunder init, which we don't want to do. So we want to move this over to server. So what I'm going to do is from server.server, so from that folder to this file, import app. And then, when you see something exploded here, we're going to come over here. Oh, that's because this file has a syntax error. So we do that, and then we come back over here. And let's change this. Hello from server.py. And then we're going to come over here and hello from server.py. There we go. So now Unicorn is importing server, which is importing in dunder init, which is importing server.py. And then we have all of our code in here. And like the point is, you don't want to have a lot inside your dunder init file. And the reason for that is because anytime you import a package, it imports that dunder init. Even if you're doing like import server.server, it's going to import the dunder init. So if you've got all kinds of code going on inside your dunder init, it's not great. So you want to move that out of there as much as you can. All right. So now we've got that. We've got our app working. It does want an extra line there. Whoops. There we go. All right. So now we're trying to figure out how to connect the database and to do it responsibly. And I'm trying to see. I'm pretty sure, because I know he has a way to do this. Just looking through this real quick. Oh, goodness gracious. There's so much information. Dependencies. Dependencies with yield. Is that what I want? Okay, so looking at this right here, let me make that a little bit bigger. He does have a yield inside of his async getDB. So we can do that, which is great. Great. Now, so he's doing this getDB function. And like this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that anybody that uses this gets the database session. He's got the DB session here. So whatever is using it gets this line. That's what a yield is going to do. It's going to send out this DB variable, which is your created DB session. And it's going to ensure that if there's ever an error message, anything happens that causes it to explode, that this always gets run. So the database always gets closed. And that's what we're trying to do right now. And he has this handy little dependency injection system where you create the function with that yield, which creates a generator. Any Python function with a yield in it is a generator. So if you call this function, it doesn't actually run this code. You have to call the next method or iterate over what this returns in order to get this code to run. That might be a little hard to understand exactly from just looking at it, but I think you'll get a little bit more of an idea. I can throw together, if you want to reach out to me on the Discord, I can show you how that works a little more in depth later on today. It's not super complicated. It's just not super intuitive if you've never seen it before. So what he's doing here, he's got this right here. He's got his dependency A, which is an async function, and he's got his yield in there, making it a generator. And then what he does is he says, all right, I've got this function here. And it takes a parameter dep A, and I'm going to set it to a depends on dependency A. So what this is going to do is when FastAPI calls this function, dependency B, it's going to run this generator, and it's going to pass dep A, this variable right here, from the yield. It's going to pass that in as dep A here. So inside this function, where you're using dep A right here, it's coming from this line. And then if there's any errors anywhere in this code, or if it goes all the way to the end and finishes, it'll walk back out and it'll come up to this finally and it'll close dep A. So it's letting us delay when certain bits of code run to a future date, a future point in time. And it guarantees, using that finally, that it always happens. Now we're going to do something a little bit different because we're going to use async with. And basically async with is just a nice little syntactic sugar for this right here. And that's why we use context managers, which is what a with works with. With works with context managers. So we're just going to copy out this system here. And he's just importing this from FastAPI. So I can come over here and we're just going to real quick. It's not going to stay here, but I want to test the sound. DB. Got an extra space in there somehow. There we go. DB. And then we're going to do async with, and we need to import. Why did that not work? Import. Syncio. No. AIO SQLite. There we go. That's what we wanted. And then it was AIO SQLite.connect. And for now, we're just going to do the memory connection again. Memory. Right like that. As DB. And then we're just going to yield. Right out here. So this will then use DB equals dependency FastAPI.depends on DB. Right, like that. Okay. All right. Then, what do we want to do with the DB? Let's just print it out. Let's print it out and see. Is that how we're gonna do it? Like this. We're just gonna do DB. There we go. Get rid of that breakpoint I accidentally set. I do not like it when there's underlines, and it doesn't like the way I formatted that. So then we can come over here. We can go back over here. Boom. So there we go. We have our connection. Right like that. Right there. I don't know if I added a print. If I import logging, and then we get logger equals logging dot get logger server, and then we do logger dot info connected to database, and then we're going to come down here, logger dot info closed database, and then if we reload this, did it print it out? No, it did not. I'm not sure how I would log out to here. It's definitely logging info. It's something to look into in the future. It'd be very handy if I could send log information out here, but I'm not sure how that would work right now. So every time we do a request, it shows up down here, and it's showing us our connection. And like Unicorn is using multiple threads, so it's showing us that the connection is on like thread 2. If I keep reloading, it's going to keep changing the thread it's on. It's probably got a limit to the thread pool, right? I don't know. Interesting. It just keeps creating more and more threads. I wonder how that works. All right. Whoop. We didn't want to close that. We want to come over here. Okay, so we've got our database working. Unfortunately, we can't see when it opens and closes. Actually, you know what? Let me real quick check that. Unicorn logging. Maybe Unicorn log to console. Here it looks like probably the right spot, because this person is using the same system I did, creating a logger with get logger, and it's not logging out. So they're asking the question, oy vey. It's a lot of fun. You know what? Oops. Let's copy this whole thing. And this right here is importing Unicorn and importing our app and passing it into Unicorn. So I'm just going to do it that way because I like that. And that all will go inside our main. And then we're going to do server.app server import. There we go. And then we want it to be on port 8000. And reload, does it have that? We'll try that. We'll see if that works. Control C. And then we're going to do poetry, run, server. It exploded. Oh, right. Python dash. Get our commands right. That exploded too. No module named my project. Ah, you know what? Just get rid of anything we don't need. And then run that over here. Still got. Server. Come over here. I had that uppercase. Keep doing the wrong thing. And this is always the pain. Like, just trying to understand what it's doing. I keep hitting the wrong button. Still blowing up. Whoop, did I maybe change the wrong thing here? I think I changed the wrong thing here. I did. I meant to change this. It's still blowing up. Fun. Oh well, so this isn't working. I guess we can't get the logging we want. Maybe, let's just scroll down a little bit more. Let's try importing that. I would like to get this working, so, because it'll make it a lot easier to see where we're at. From server import. I cannot spell. All right. Basic config. We're going to set the D to debug. Keyboard might be a little bit wonky. I'm not sure what's up with that. There we go. Not sure why this says unicorn error, but that works. So now if we come over here, try running that. There we go. We got more stuff showing up in here. We got some stuff from AIO SQLite. We got some stuff. This is what we wanted to log out. Database closed. Info server connected to database. So, some fancy stuff there. Now we got more information showing up. Let's see, though, if we can't get rid of that AIO SQLite. Logging, .get logger, AIO SQLite, .set level, logging.info. There we go. Now if we reload that, you can see right here. It's setting up for our request. We've got our request right there. And then we're setting up the database connection. And then when the request finishes, it closes the database. So that's what all of that work we did in that other file is for. It's over here. So that's why we're doing that. Now, I'm just going to copy this out. We won't need this because that's going to be somewhere else. And then we're going to do from server.database import db. Okay, we'll just call it db. I want to make sure my names are good, and it's sometimes it can be difficult to pick a good name. Connection, whoop, Python file, connection. We're gonna put this in here. Import AIO SQLite. We can get rid of this. We can get rid of that. Session. There we go. Just renaming those so that they don't conflict with the function name. We were writing code fast before, and now we got to create our dunder init file. Init from server.database.connection import db. And now we go over here. Not reload. I wonder if we can get reloading working. As an import string. Server app. Let's see if that's what it wants. Over here. All right, application startup complete. Reload, there we go. All right. And you see, it's still got this. It got the connection, even though the connection in here, this right here, is coming from server.database all the way over here. So this function is getting used in here automatically, and it's being called for each request. Every request that we make gets a new database connection. That may or may not be the greatest thing, depending on how your system is set up to work. I know with Postgres, you only get so many connections. So what you would end up doing is you would set up some kind of connection pooling that handles connecting multiple connections to one connection. I can't remember what the name of that is. I know I've got it running for our Discord bots, because you get like 28 connections on the database, and I run this pool, and it handles like several thousand connections at once. And it feeds them all into the same connections on the database. It's very convenient, very nice. And that's probably something you would end up using here. But again, this is just a small little experiment we're doing. So we don't have to worry about all that. All right. What's next? We've got, let's see. How do we want to do this? We got the database connecting. We got that working. We know how that's going to work. So what we want to do, since we've got this dunder main working, we probably want to do, what do we want to do here? We want to run a check. We want to say, update the database if it's out of date. So, how do we do this? How do we do that? This raises a question for me. Does FastAPI have events? Can I run something when FastAPI first starts up? Because that's when we want to update our database. The first time that the server starts up and the database is out of date, we want to update the database. We're going to actually need to add another table, but we'll get to that in just a second. I just want to see. I'm looking real quick and I'm not seeing what I need. I'm looking in the tutorials though, so maybe in the advanced users guide. his docs are great. So I would prefer to find it here if I can. If not, we jump out to Google. He's got information on testing. Aha, testing events. So there we go. This isn't necessarily the docs. Yeah, Kintech is saying that it's in there. Like this doc right here is for testing, but it's for testing events. And one thing that's great about tests and like documentation for tests and stuff is you can actually see code that works. So you don't have to necessarily find the exact docs for the app.onEvent. You just have to find the tests and they'll show you how it works. So like right here, this is everything we need. We just need to add an app on start. And we have that inside server. That's going to go right here. Well, let me move. I guess that's fine there. Logger.info. Checking database version. And this is going to require, and this is why I wanted to use an event, because it'll handle injecting the database for me. So I don't have to deal with that mess. All right. Now, how do we want to do that? This is going to be, we have to find out from the database what the version of the database is without knowing anything about the database. So, let's change this term. Let's change this wording. Ensure, starting database. There we go. And we're going to do that. And we're going to go, maybe we don't want the connection. Yeah, we do. We're going to do this. From database, import, run migrations. We're going to do async, or no, await, run migrations. And we're going to pass it the DB, right like that. And we're saying we get an error message over here on our auto reload because run migrations doesn't exist inside our database file. And we're going to import that from server.database.migrations, import run migrations. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to create a Python file, migrations. Like that. Async def db. And then we're going to come over here. We got to create an init file from server.database.migrations, import run migrations. There we go. And now it's telling me that there's a syntax error inside. So the imports are all working. We just don't have this file set up correctly. So what we're going to do is async with db.execute, select value from, and this is what we're going to have to do. We have to create a new table. Options. We're going to create a new table options. And basically, this is just going to store a bunch of information about our project. The tricky bit is we probably want to create a function for getting the version. So let's do that. Version equals wait, get database version. We're going to pass it the database. Async def get database version db, and it's going to return an int. And the tricky bit is if there's no tables in the database. If there's no tables in the database, it's going to raise an exception. So we're going to need to put a try block around it. I don't know what the exception is going to be just yet, so we're going to hold off on putting the try except. We're just going to try to run this query as cursor return cursor dot, I think it was get one. Do they have actual docs somewhere? License PyPy docs. There we go. So then we can come over here to cursors. This is the way to do it. Fetch one. Fetch a single row. Is there a way to get a scalar? That's all I care about. All right. Well, it looks like we got to do fetch one, and that'll get me a row, and then I can just grab the one item from it. Cursor, fetch, one word, 0. Why does it say that? This should have worked. Does that not inject? Looking at the logs here, trying to understand what is going on. Don't see. Select. Because it's sending the depends object. It's not actually resolving it. It's not injecting it. So this might be something to Google. FastAPI event depends. Depends for request functions only. So FastAPI is built on Starlet. So the events are actually part of Starlet, not FastAPI. Let's see. I'm just trying to see if there's maybe a way we can fake it. This way we don't have to rewrite that code. We don't have to write our own code to handle the dependencies. I don't see anything like that. So it does look like we have to write our own thing. It's not the worst. We can do it. It's not hard. I would have liked to not have to deal with that, but okay. So, we get to do some experimentation. I'm not sure how this is going to work. Async for connection. Is that wait next? We're going to try this. db equals await next. Really that. And this is why you don't make your names inside of functions match anything outside the function. It's not an iterator. It's an anext. Anext is not defined. So how is he doing this? think I can do... No such table options. There we go. So we figured this out. But we need to be careful here, because we want to make sure our connection gets closed when there's an error. We didn't close that connection just now because we called A next, and we never called A next again to get to the next part of that function. So, well, it may have closed. I don't know. The way the finally works should have caused it to close. But we're going to do it like this. Actually, import context lib. Does that make sense? With context lib. Trying to remember if this is... Just trying to see if there's a way to do this. Async exit stack. I think we need to do it like this. As stack. Yeah, we didn't need async. Or do we? I don't know. I don't know what we gotta do here. Just a second here. Gotta think about this. Gotta think about it and figure out what we're doing. Figure out how to make this work. We're gonna do something we really shouldn't. But it's probably the best way to do this. So we're gonna do try. This should not be in here. This should not be in here. This should be. Finally. Oh no, that makes sense. Never mind. Right like that. That is our connection. This will be session. We're figuring this out a little bit at a time. Session. Session. Await. Interesting. I wonder, can we do this? I think this will do what we want. It's a little bit funky. Okay, that should have worked. Now, what we can do, because I want to make sure this is working, we're going to go over here to connection, import logging, logger equals logging.get logger db, logger dot info connecting database, logger.info disconnecting database. It's not showing me the info I want. I don't want to deal with that, so we're not going to worry about it. It should be working correctly. That's what this is all designed to do, so it should be right. We're still getting an operational error, and this is what I was looking for. I need to find this. I'm literally just going to copy this, and it's coming from the SQLite 3 package, so we're just going to close that. Where do we need this? Context lib we don't need. Where were we putting this? run migrations. Was it in the run migrations we need to put this? Yes, we do. This is right here. So here, we want to catch that operations error. Except this right there. And if we get that, we return 0. Nope, put it in the wrong spot. It's in the next function. We should be able to get this database working and start getting some of the REST API working today. I want to finish out in an hour here. Can you go over how the imports in the Dunder network? At what point were you referring to? I wasn't paying attention to chat very well. Do you remember what section that was, Kintek? Three. And then we return 0. So if the table options doesn't exist, we're going to return a 0. The version is 0 because we haven't set a version. If the version is found, it'll return this. Now, because we're just going to store a string value in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the AST module to do some value parsing. So this way we can store a string in the options table, and then we'll use AST and repr to handle storing actual Python literals in the fields, and it'll be secure. Literal eval, because this will only eval literals, so like list literals, like this will be possible to parse as a string. Right, like that. So if we pass that to ast.literalEval, it'll give us back a list with 1, 2, 3 in it. It won't work if we give it like a lambda. That'll raise an error. So if we did like this, do something bad, that would actually raise an error because it's not a literal value. So like strings, numbers, like ints, floats, lists, tuples, dictionaries, those all work literal eval. Anything more complicated blows up. So that's why we can use that. Nice and safe. Select value from options where options.key equals db version. Now we need to go ahead and create that table. Run migrations. If version equals 0, self dot, or not self, create database. Else run migrations from version. So basically, the first function, if we've never created the database before, we're going to create the database there. We're gonna run version 1 migration, and that'll be it. And then this one right here will go ahead and it'll find every migration after that version number. We got to think about how we're going to do this. It's going to be a little bit tricky, but we'll figure it out. It's not super complicated. All right. Now, I'm a little bit bothered by the ordering, and I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. Because I want these to be in alphabetical order. Get version should be before run migrations. And then we're going to do a create database, async. Oh, we're going to do that. We got to make sure we await those. And we're going to have to pass in the database. Right, like that. So this is going to need to be awaited. DB. We're going to pass this one to DB and the version. Await. And then we're going to have run migrations from. I'm going to write this function first because this one is going to call a bunch of functions that each run the migration. Whereas this one is going to call that function just once with one migration. So it makes sense to do this one first, since they're both going to be using the same functions. All right. Get, let me see, migrations. Get available migrations after. This is going to hunt for all of our migrations. And then we're going to go migration in migrations. Actually, so we won't have to write another function, because if you remember, inside of our version 1, we created a class migration that already has the function, has the run function. So we're just going to loop through all the available migrations and call their run functions in order. So this way, we run all of this code in the appropriate order. So this way, it builds up all the necessary changes in order that they were created. So this way, you get the latest database version. It's kind of fun, isn't it? When you create an init and import the migrations in there. I'm still not sure I totally understand, but I can real quick go through. I think we come over here. Were you referring to how I was doing the injections? Because, let me see, I have server. So like this right here, this DB is going to get imported through the database on the server package. So we go over here to the server package, database, and then we're pulling in DB. It's going to be from the init because there was no other module specified. And then we have all that stuff there. So I'm not totally following what your question is. Sorry. Can you go over the imports and the init work, please? When you created an init and import the migrations in there. Oh, okay. Like this file right here, the migrations init. I mean, I haven't imported the migrations just yet. That's going to get handled in here when we get the run migrations from. We'll figure it out. We're going to get there. For migration in migrations. Migration. Await. Migration. That run. And pass that DB. Like that. Now we have to create this get available migrations after. Def get available migrations after version. It's going to return a list of, and we're going to do this. We're going to come and we're going to do from typing import protocol. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a class migration protocol, and then we're going to do async def run connection. And that's not going to do anything. This is just a protocol. This is just a protocol. Awesome. All right. Yeah, if you have any questions, like afterwards, like I'll have all the code on GitHub and you can just point at stuff, and if you have any questions, it won't be too bad. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a protocol that has a run function that takes a connection, which is the exact same interface that we're using over here. So we have a migration and we have a run, right like that. So we're just mirroring that in the other file so we can get some type hinting. We don't have to actually inherit a class on anything. We don't have to do anything fancy like that. This simplifies the import structure and all that, because we don't have to import stuff here that's being imported there, and it gets messy. So we're just using a protocol to simplify everything. All right? Okay. So we're returning a list of migration protocols from a version. Now we're going to do while. Trying to think here how we want to do this. While true. That's what I think we're going to end up doing. Because what we're doing is we're going to do import, and let's see if this works. Server dot database dot migrations dot version plus equals 1, because we're getting after the current version. So this is going to get 0, or like if we're on version 1, this is going to get version 1. We don't want to run the version 1 migration again. So we want to run the version 2. So we're just going to increase the version number by 1. And we're going to look and see if we have a version right like that. So basically, we're literally going through and importing each one. Migration module equals like that. And then we're going to come up here and we're going to have migrations equals a list. And then we're going to do migrations dot append migration module. But we got to do this. Try except import error. Now, the one tricky bit here is we might have some issues. Like, if there's an import error inside of our migration, it's just going to get ignored. It's not going to show up in here because we can't tell the difference between an import error inside the module and, well, you know what we could do. I'm trying to think. Could we do that? There's ways to get around it. I'm not going to worry about it. We could use the import lib to check and see if the file existed based on an import path, like that dot notation where you have server dot database dot migrations dot version. The import lib will let you check if a module exists without importing it. I'm not going to worry about it. Like, we're just going to assume that all of our migration files are written correctly. So yeah, this will be fine. This will work out great. For our needs, this is great. But when we get an import error, we're going to stop because we're going to assume that there are no more versions of migrations. And then if there is no errors, we're going to just append the migration module to the migrations. And then we're going to return migrations, right like that. So now we have run migrations from working. And then up here, we're going to do create database. So what we're going to do is we're going to migration file, actually, dot migration. This is supposed to be the protocol. So migration, and then we're going to create it right like that. Migration file equals, hit the right button, import server dot database dot migrations dot version 1. And then we get the migration equals migration file dot migration, and we create it, and then we do await migration dot run, and then we pass that to DB, right like that. Has no attribute migration. Why? Why are you doing this? So maybe it seems to only be importing this. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Let's restart this and see if that... Nope, it doesn't fix it. Line 13 and create database. So it's this line right here. It's only getting the server file. So let me try this. Import lib. Let's get import lib. Import lib dot import module. That worked. So let's go down here. That's a little bit smarter. It's acting a little bit more like what we're expecting. Import lib dot import module, right like that. Just out of curiosity, since we've imported it, find loader, name path, and bound caches. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head how to check. I think you're going to use the find loader somehow. I'm just not sure how. So I'm not going to worry about it. Like I said, we're not going to worry about it. We're just going to catch that import error. If there's an import error, we stop and we're good to go. All right. Cool. That'll run the migrations. And if we... Where did that run that? We didn't give it... Did we somewhere? Oh, you know what we did? Inside connection. We're telling it to create it inside of memory. Right like there. I'm curious if we do this. Import. Can I get this to inject into this? I don't think we can. Something. This is just part of my process. Like, I kind of poke stuff until I figure out what's going to work. And we're going to create thing. And this might... Like, I need this to log out here. And I don't know if I can get that to log out to there. Irritating a little bit, but oh well. Let's see if we can't get it to log. Import logging. Logger equals logging.get logger. Database. DB. Do that. A little smaller. Logger.log.info. Got something. Maybe we need to... Nope. That didn't do what I wanted. Because I'm trying to pass in configuration here, and I'm not sure how that would function. How do I pass in a config file? So the dependency stuff here isn't as powerful as I would like. It appears that it only does dependency stuff. Maybe. You know what we can do? Maybe do? Let's do this. We'll just do something crazy. Raise, exception, and we're going to pass it something. This should print something out to the log. There we go. Yeah, see? It's not resolving the dependency. So it's only resolving dependencies on the request functions. So when we do app.get, it'll look at these args and see if there's any depends. And if there are, it'll get the thing that it depends on. So it's very simple. It's a very basic dependency injection. A little bit disappointing, in my opinion. I understand that it's not the easiest thing to do. So, Um, hmm. Trying to think. How could we change that? We could make it simpler. How could we make it do what we need it to do? Because I want to grab the database file name from a config file. And I want to figure out how I can pass that into here. Like, I know how to do it if I'm doing it right here. I could just pass it right in there. So let's jump into the code here. Let's look at what this looks like. Does he have any way? He does not. Interesting. How do we make this work? I guess, you know what? We're overthinking it. We don't actually need the configuration to be a dependency, because it doesn't change. It's the same all the time. So you can create a function that loads your config and just gets you the config and wherever you need it. It's a little bit sad that it's not being cached. We're having to reparse the whole file. But this is just a fun project. We're not too worried about performance. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Yeah, we're gonna create a file pf config, and we'll use JSON, and then def get config, right like that. We're gonna use the current working directory. Import. Does pathlib let me do that? Pathlib.path. There we go. Current working directory. Path equals / config.json. Return path.open. This file. Return json.load file. All right, so we got that work. That should be working. So then we come over here to connection, and then we say, should we give that some defaults? We could. So this is going to blow up. So we'll worry about that in just a second here. Import server.config, right like that. And then we're going to come down here, file, db file equals server.config.getConfig, and then we're going to grab db connection. And then we're going to use db file here. No such file or directory. So we're going to take that. We're going to come back over here. Try. There's actually a better way to do this. File equals path.open. Well, actually, you know what? We don't even need the try. We can just do this. If path.exists, no, exist. If I could spell correctly, it would correct correctly. Not. If not path exists, return db file, or what did I name it? db connection. This will be our default. Data.db. There we go. And now it should have. Did it not work? Did it not create our server? Or our database? I don't see it. It should have created it somewhere in here. Table users already exists. So it created it somewhere. Aha! It just popped in. I don't know why it took so long, but it just popped in. All right, there we go. Now, the problem is we ran the migration and we never set the new version in the options, which we haven't added to our migrations yet. So we're going to come down here and we will need to delete that table, unfortunately, or that database. Make that, duplicate that. Options. This should be unique. And then we're going to give it a value, which should not be null. Then we get rid of these. All right. Close that. And then let me create a new file. Options. Def set option. Name, which will be a string. Value, which will be a string. Or, yeah, it'll be any. Because import any. Moving a little bit fast here, so like I said, if you have any questions, let me know. If I can't get to it right now, I'll get to it later. Async with db.execute insert. Now, how does the insert work in this again? Did he have one here? Yeah. Insert into... Let's just look it up. Insert. Just real quick, make sure we get that syntax correct. Right there. Insert into options, values, it's supposed to key in value. There we go. Trying to remember what is the wildcard character for Python SQLite. Python SQLite insert value escape value. That's what I'm looking for. That's the word I'm looking for. Not what I'm looking for. Why am I not seeing? SQLite. Why am I not seeing what I'm looking for? Like, is it percent? I can't remember how to put a value into a SQLite insert the correct way. Oh, question marks. I knew it was weird. Why are they doing 4 question marks in one user? Okay, I see. So it's got to be a tuple. All right, that's easy enough. Values, name, and value. Name, value, and we need to do the repr for this because we want to use Python's literals. And then we got to have a get option. Get option name string db. And then we'll do default equals, well, you know, we won't worry about a default right now. Return any. And then this is going to use import ast return. Oh, we didn't finish this. Don't need this right here. We just need to wait. There we go. And then async with db.execute. Select value from options where key equals that. And then name. So, as cursor, return cursor dot fetch 1 row equals wait return row 0 because there should only be one value in that. All right, now we have our options. Oh, I forgot to do one thing. We gotta turn this into an actual value. Literal eval. Right like that. Okay. Oh my gosh. Lots of code to do. All right, now, where did we want that? So now we're going to use that here. From server.database.options import get option. And then we're going to do return, await, get option. Keyboard is being weird. DB version from the DB. Sure. And then we need to have set option because this is going to let us create database, run migrations, await, set option, last version, run. And new version. New version. Does that make sense? We might have to change some code below. We'll get it. We'll get it. DB version is now new version. DB. There we go. All right. So now that's working. And what I need to change is how this loop works up here, the while loop. Let's move this up here. And then we're going to duplicate this, and we're going to move it down here. So what that does is, does that make sense? No, that doesn't make sense, does it? +1. So what that does is it comes in. So our version is going to be 0 on the first run. And then it's going to be +1. So we're going to check and see if there's a version 1. If there is a version 1, we're going to put it in here, and we're going to increase the version. And then we need to return the version. So this way, the version here will only ever match what we loaded. So we only want to increment if the version was found. So this way we can return the version that the last version we got. So that's going to be an int. Like this. Does this work? Yes, that works. All right, cool. All right, next up, we need to capture. No, not that. Not that. Let's just find where we called that. New version. And we're going to return new version. Actually, you know what? We didn't need to change any of that. You know why? Here, let's just put that back to the way it was, because that's messy. That's messy and I don't like it. I like the way it was before because... Why are you doing this? Version plus equals 1. There we go. All right, so now we've got just one of those. But what we can do is, down here, we know that migration is always going to be set to the last migration that ran. So then we can return migration.version because we set that in the file. And we can do this version int. So our protocol has that. And then why? Oh, we got to set the return type to int. Why are you complaining? Might be reference before assignment. That's like, okay, whatever. That should work. Right? Yes, no, maybe. If migration else version. So there we go. This way, if there's no migration set, if like we have no migrations on our migrations list, might be clearer. Like this is just how you make this work. You just play around with your code until you like it. Not so if there's no migrations, we return version. And now it's still going to complain, but whatever. That will be set because we know, because of this check, that there are migrations. So this loop will always result in a migration being set to migration. All right. So now we got the version. this gets called, so new version is there, then we set the new version here. And we only want to do that if new version is not equal to version. Let's not be setting the database, updating the database for no reason. Table users already exists. Let's delete this database because it didn't have the options table, so we couldn't make it work. Let's rerun that. Ah, right. Gotta delete that again. Forgot to update the version 1. I want this to be key, because this is just basically a dictionary with an arbitrary value and value. All right, startup complete. We now should have a database. We can't really see the information in there because I don't have anything to view that with. All right. All right, what next? But that's creating all of our tables, and if we rerun this, why did it explode? Trying to get DB version. So now, why did that not work? Let's go over to options. Name, value. So that should be working. I'm not sure why we're getting none for that row. So basically, it's not finding the row. And I'm not sure why it wasn't set inside of... Oh, you know why? Let's check and see if I'm right. I think maybe create database. No, I don't think that's right, because the new version is 1. Version should be 0. So that should be F0, create database. New version is not equal to version because it's 1. It should be 0. Set DB version, get DB version. What is happening? I don't understand. Kintex saying I have DB version instead of version. But like I'm doing set option and I'm doing get option. Yeah. I'm not sure why it's not loading correctly. And since I can't get the logging to work, things are quite a bit harder than they should be. So, what if we come over here to our test? Can we fake this? Yes, we can. We can fake this. So let's come over here and test. Let's just copy this right here. We're going to create a new test right down here. Test. Database creation. Now, let's go back over here to server. We just need to replicate this. Come back over here, right like that. And then we have to import DB from server.database, import DB. All right. We don't need that. Then we need to import migrations. All right. And then we want to do, oh, this is not going to work. That doesn't work, so we can get rid of that. We can get rid of this. Get rid of that. File, or connection, string or none equals none. Connection or, so what that's doing right there is it's saying if the connection is set, use it. If it's none, which is falsy, use this right here. So that'll let us come over here and change that connection to memory. Right like that. Now if I do Command-Alt-R, we should be able to cause that to explode. Not sure why my thing got run in Python 3.9, but whatever. So we're just gonna fake it. Why? There we go. No? It's still giving me the same error. Alright, whatever. We'll do from typing import union. Okay, says it passed. We know it didn't pass, but we know it's running now. Alright, so run migrations. Now we want to do, we need to have get options from server dot database dot options get option. Now we want to do assert version equals get option db version from db or session. Assert version equals 1. Oops, forgot to await. And you see, like, it might be hard to see, it's a little bit small, but it says assert coroutine object get option equals 1. That's because we didn't await, so this gave us a coroutine. So we could await that later. There we go, passed. So it's getting set. Why is it not working on the second run? Very confused. Let's try deleting the database, killing this, and then we run it. Come on, run the correct thing. Why? I'm so confused. That doesn't make any sense. Why is this happening? It's working here. It works on the first run. Why would row be unsubscriptable? You know what we can do? Let's do this. Because more or less, this is what's happening when we run that. It still worked. What is happening? Why is this doing this to us? So I guess we gotta figure out why the logging isn't working over here, so we can figure out why this is happening. Very frustrating. I got the logging to work. No. All right. Where is it exploding? Let's jump to there. It's exploding in options. So let's import logger, import logging. Logger equals logging dot get logger db logger dot set level logging dot debug logger dot debug row row. Nope, still didn't show it. I'm so confused why the logging isn't working. Any ideas, anyone? Log level debug, basic config, debug. Why are you doing this? This doesn't make sense. It's not showing my logs, so I can't debug anything. Very frustrating. I don't understand. Why are you doing this? Let's come over here to main. Because we had the logging working at one point, right? Well, if I hit the right thing. Aha! So for some reason, the auto reloader is breaking things. That's what we were looking for, right there. Very, very frustrating. So if I do logger this time, and then I come back over here and I run it again, debug db, row none. All right, that works great. What can we do? Logger.debug setting name to value. All right, so let's make sure we're not like somehow setting that to none. So we can go ahead and delete the DB. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. None whatsoever. All right, we ran it here. We're going through. Setting DB version to 1. So that worked. Now let's kill it and see if we load it up again. And that still gives the same error. Why would this happen? So you know what? Let's come over here. is it running the wrong migrations? Is it like for some reason running this migration multiple times? From logging, import logging, logger equals logging.get logger, migration 1. Logger.debug running migration 1. Just make sure that's not being run for some reason. No, it's not running that one. This makes no sense. Let's go over here to connection. Logger.debug opening DB file. Let's try running that. Oh. Opening data.db. Why? Oh. You know what I think it is? This is so stupid. Cursor equals await. Cursor.commit. What did that do? So let's come over here to this one. Where's the docs? Cursors. Connection has commit. Cursor. It has enter, cursor proxy, close, execute many. Let's try this. Let's just async with as cursor. Do nothing with it. Wait, db. Well, let's just run it that way. That should stop and rerun. So that passed. Let's delete this. And then kill that, and then run it again. So that didn't solve the problem. Just gonna poke it a little bit until we figure out where our problem's at. Delete the database. db.commit. Wait. That doesn't break the test. There it is. Now whenever I restart the thing, it comes up. We are opening database DB. We get the row and it's 1. So now it's being set. Literally the only problem was the cursor wasn't being committed. That was a lot of effort for a very small problem. All right, it's been 3 hours. We have the database working. We have the REST API working. We don't have any endpoints in place. We do have our database tables all built. We don't have the CLI working yet. So next step is going to be that we need to get all of the endpoints working. But we've got our migrations working. We could do, let's see, just for fun, let's do this. Create a version 2, just for the heck of it. Get rid of this. Actually, no, let's keep that. We're going to rename it to 2. Okay. And then we're not going to need this because we're not actually going to... Well, I guess we do need it for the type checking here. But we're going to do from server.database.options import set option. Okay. And then we're going to come down here and we're going to running migration 2. All we're going to do is we're going to set an option, and then we're going to check and see if that option got set. All right, so then we're going to do await set option testing. It worked on the connection. All right, and then we're going to come over here to our test. This will be the easiest way to test this. Test equals await get option test. This actually should blow up because it should run to... Oh, no, it won't. It's only going to run the first one. Await run migrations session testing on session, right? And that's what we named it. If we go back to our tests, there we go. All right. Assert test equals there. We want it to equal this. There's a hotkey for what I'm trying to. If my keyboard would function. Well, can't get it to work the way I wanted it to. Not what I want. Not what I want. Boom. Something blew up. What blew up? Ah. Okay. Now, so this was a good test because we need to be able to update, insert or update. And I can't remember how to do that in SQLite. SQLite, insert or update. Is there a simple way to do this? Yes. This should be what we need. In a short form, replace into. So then we need to go over to options. Stop and rerun. There we go. So what that means is both migrations are in. And it doesn't show me any of my logging. But if I kill this and then I rerun that, migration 2, running migration 2, setting testing to it worked. DB version to 2. And then if we kill that and run it again, you will see... where did we run it? Let me... Can't see where... Oh, there it is. I see it now. Create a buffer there. So we ran it right here. And then it goes through and it's saying opening the database. It's checking to see what the version is, and it's set to 2, and it doesn't run any migrations. So it only runs new migrations, and the only way, all we have to do to add a new migration is to create a new file with that naming scheme, which is super convenient. And we don't have to like screw around with all this weird stuff. Now, maybe we don't want to do the migrations the way we were doing here, because there's really no harm in just running migration 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm actually thinking I'm in favor of doing this, getting rid of this 0, or right like that. Okay, and then if we can get rid of that other one, the create database one. So this, in theory, should let us delete this, and it should, when we run it, run both migration 1 and 2. And then if we look through from here, this is where we ran the command. Migration 1 running, migration 1. Migration 2 running, migration 2. All right, and then it's setting it to, it worked. Setting DB version to 2. There you go. That works. And then if we go over here, we can check our tests. We wouldn't need to run this one anymore. This needs to be a 2. And then we run it, and that test works. And of course, let's remove this test code, and there's only be a 1. And you just literally do that by deleting this file and then rerunning it. And it works. So there you go. Now you can add migrations, and when you first install, it installs all the migrations. And if you run it and you've already got an installation with an existing database, it'll only run the newer migrations. And like, you're not having to do anything crazy. It's a really basic migration system, and it works pretty well. It's not bad for 3 hours work. Alrighty. Alright. How is this passing? This one's not going to pass. Watch this. It's not going to pass. If we do, let's run the tests on the whole file. See, we have one test passed, one test failed, and that's because here we never added the options table. Now if we run it, it passes. So let's go ahead and git add. I've got it. What is happening? Git add. We're going to want to ignore that. Let me remove this real quick, because I don't want to commit that with this. I want to commit this separate. Git commit -m add test for migrations. All right, and then we'll come back over here, Command Z. Git commit dash, whoop, we need to add. Git commit -m add options table, if I could spell. All right, so that's done. Let's do git status so we can figure out what we want to do here. We want to add main and init. Git add We do not want to add PyCache. Git commit -m. Add server run command. Server database. Add options. We gotta add. And then we want to add migrations. Version 1. Git commit. Add options table. Git add. We need to add. I'm just trying to add all the stuff to Git with reasonable commit messages for each thing. So this way we know what changed, where it changed. I should have been doing this as I went. I'm in the habit of not necessarily doing it this way because my fancy little GUI will let me select which lines I want to commit, not just whole files. There's a way to do that from the CLI, but I don't think that anybody wants to learn how to do that. That just seems difficult to me. Alright. So next up we need to add... We added options, we added the updated migration. Git commit -m. Add migration mechanics. Git status. Let's figure out what we're missing still. Git add server config. Add config loader. Git add database. Oh, server. Add database low connection. Git add server. We should add that to data.db. We don't want to add the database to the repository since that would be changing for everybody. Like, we don't want to save any of our data for anybody else. We want them to have a nice, clean database. Into .gitignore. .gitignore. Git commit. Ignore the database. Did we miss anything? Nope. Git push. There we go. All right, all the code is on the GitHub. Feel free to ask any questions. Any questions right now? I'm gonna give it like a couple more minutes here, just to see if anybody had any questions. Live streaming. Not sure where I'm looking. Okay, nobody's on there. Two watching now. All right. Looking good. That was a lot of fun. We've got a lot of ways to go on this project. But I think we got probably some of the hardest bits done. Like, we've got the database done. We've got migrations working. We've got our config figured out for the most part. We figured out how to make the REST API work. And it's getting the database injected correctly. So yeah, at this point, it's just a matter of, to get the REST API working, to write the endpoints that handle creating files, uploading them, editing them, all that fun stuff. And then we can figure out the CLI. Probably do another session, another live stream next Sunday, maybe. We'll see. I'll figure out what my timing looks like. This was a bit early for me. All right. Yeah, no problem. I'm glad to share it and let people see my thought process behind stuff. It's it's the thought process that takes time to develop, and that's probably the hardest part about learning to code, is because at first it's like you just glue things together and you end up with this like hodgepodge and this all in one file or spread across a few files without much thought behind it. And like I've got a lot of files here that don't really do a whole lot, but just help keep things organized. So you know where you got to go to find the things you want. Yeah. And I hope a lot of people can learn that kind of stuff from these videos. All right. Well, I think I'm going to call it a night. Maybe get some dinner. Figure some stuff out. My vacation from work ends today. I will be back at work tomorrow. Oh, Mondays. Yeah, all right. All right, you all have a great night. How do I end this stream? Well, that's going to be the tricky part. Can I do it from OBS?